Roger, sir. Hello, everyone. This is Officer Cervantes. Welcome to today's September 21st media availability. And we can go ahead and begin, sir, whenever you're ready.
Okay, hello, everyone. I made earlier remarks at the commission this morning regarding a series of both COVID update as well as some discussions on robberies and the increase that we've seen in the number of those robberies that the assailant has a firearm during the commission of the robbery. And a concern that we have is that it's not universal throughout the city, but I did identify 5 areas that we saw significant increases again in the number of their robberies that are armed versus bodily force. And our work on that is to, in these instances, all 5 of them, these are largely robberies that are occurring on the street. Some of them do occur commercial businesses, and we're increasing our foot traffic. We're seeing with the return of the opening up of our communities, our society, as the pandemic relaxes, we're seeing more foot traffic in our commercial corridors and our restaurants and other establishments. And we think that there are opportunities that are there that are confronting those individuals. Some of them are on sidewalks, other times they're in alleys and adjacent to the businesses. And our plan in responding to that is to increase our foot beats, as well as utilizing police reserves and our mounted unit. Tomorrow you'll see our mounted unit in the Melrose area conducting their patrols as a high visibility and awareness to reassure the public of their safety. And additionally to that, we've added some overtime patrols in these most violent impacted zones, not just with robberies, but in shooting violence as well, and in follow-up investigations, which are allowing us to identify those responsible and bring them before the criminal justice system. An example of that was just about a week and a half ago in robbery homicide. Division solved a series of 211 robberies that occurred in central Hollywood and Wilshire, identifying 2 suspects who were stealing expensive jewelries and watches and so forth from community members. And those 2 were arrested and are being criminally prosecuted. Lastly, we're working closely with the district attorney's office to ensure that as we make arrests of people committing armed robberies with a firearm, that those are some of the most dangerous and uncertain type crimes that really put the community at great risk. And so when arrests are made for those type of instances, we're asking the district attorney's office to apply every full measure of the criminal justice system as far as enhancements for the use of a firearm in the commission of a robbery, as well as any other enhancements that are available to really strike a tone that there's not going to be a pervasiveness or an allowance for this type of criminal actions to go unchecked. I'm proud of the work of our people. We see our gun arrests, our firearm arrests, our weapons arrests are up by 80%. The number of guns on the street are just far too many. In the next week or the next 2 weeks, you'll hear more information about the department's strategies in trying to focus on the supplier of these guns that we're seeing in too many hands in our communities. There'll be more on that, but today I just wanted to frame my remarks this afternoon about that effort with our increase in armed robberies in the city. With that, I'll take questions and comments.
Thank you, Chief. Our first question will be from Phil Schuman. Go ahead with your question. Phil, are you there?
Yeah, hi, Chief. How you doing?
Good.
Sorry, am I to understand there's no video available on this briefing, or?
I'm sorry, for some reason, I'm looking at a screen that does not give me a video option. Media relations, can you guys reload this or fix that?
Not that I want to, this would be great if we...
I've got a face for radio, so I think they're working on the connection. Let's see.
Yes, and not at this moment, Chief. We were unable to see you, so you can just ask your question.
Well, this doesn't really doesn't do us any good in TV land. And is it possible we could stand by for a sec to see if there's a way to get the camera feed up?
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. Let me ask our team to. I think they just need to realign me as far as a panelist on this group. Let me see what the problem is.
Thank you.
Chief, on our end, we made you a panelist. And so I don't know if you want to log back on, perhaps.
Modern technology.
Hey. Thank you for fixing that.
Sure.
I know you spoke about this at the police commission this morning, talking about vaccine rates and the fact that you now have mobile vaccine units going out to the individual divisions. And I know this is a potentially sensitive subject, but I mean, do you believe that all of your personnel should be vaccinated?
Yes, I'm a firm believer in that the vaccine is a lifesaver. It protects not only the officer themselves, but their families and those they come in contact with. It's, I follow the science on this, not the misinformation and the rhetoric that we see social media and other mediums filled with. This is without doubt, the science shows that a person who is vaccinated is far safer. Those that have even been vaccinated but have resultantly had to be hospitalized have survived this virus. We have testimonies from one of our reserves that was vaccinated and was hospitalized and placed in intensive care for a short time. And he's convinced, as his doctor is, that but for the vaccine, the COVID would have killed him. So it's not just the fact that it's a preventive measure for the vast majority of people who have been impacted by COVID and they survived. That it is for those that could still come down with this. We've seen people who have come down with COVID on more than just one occasion. There's this concept misinformation again in the community that a person who's been previously impacted by COVID somehow has natural immunities and will not potentially suffer another bout with COVID. It's very tragic, but Rose Ochi, a former police commissioner with Los Angeles Police Department, came down with multiple bouts of COVID, and that's how in her third instance is where we lost her, and she died during this pandemic. So the instance of a person having COVID, there's the natural immunities. It offers some measure, but the vaccine only strengthens those immunities and strengthens their resilience in a very dangerous time. So if I'm not give you every assurance here, I'm a full supporter of this, and I'm asking all of our people to become vaccinated. We have 6 people in the hospital today. We've lost 10 to date. 2 of the people in the hospital are in critical condition, and we've had 3 spouses. We've not lost this many officers to any type of affliction like this in my lifetime. Even the threats of them in the street, nowhere near this velocity of loss of life.
Only 56% of your people are vaccinated. So given all that you just said, that's a relatively low number.
Well, it's a number that's improving. I will say that we have our efforts of updating our city's vaccination platform. We have thousands of more individuals that this last week we've reached out and spoken with to identify their vaccination status, whether they are or are not vaccinated. As you know, there's a city ordinance that's going into effect October 5th requiring all city employees to be vaccinated. And so I know that we have a backlog of updating that record platform. And I expect, as I reported in commission, that by next Tuesday in my update, that we'll see many more people that will be able to clarify and show that they have been vaccinated. I am aware, Phil, however, of the 2,660 individuals that filed a notice of intent to claim a sincerely held religious belief, as well as 300 plus that have a notice of intent to file a medical exemption. But I'm also aware that every member of this department, every sworn member of this department, in order for them to become a police officer, required vaccinations. And it is a condition of employment for people who join this department to be immunized against a host of illnesses, including the measles and so forth. And so this is being added to that list that every sworn member of this organization has already participated in. And I just ask for everyone that has not yet been vaccinated to please be vaccinated. I handle calls every week with spouses and family members of individuals that are being hospitalized and who face the potential of death due to this vaccine or due to this virus. And it tugs on my heart.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Our next question will be from Gina Silva. Go ahead with your question.
Hello, Chief. The LAPD just approved an ordinance that will prohibit protests within 300 feet of the target's residence. How will the LAPD enforce that?
Well, the city council, it's my understanding, approved the second reading of the ordinance today. And so it wasn't the LAPD that approved the ordinance.
Forgive me, you're right. You're right. I meant to say the LA City Council.
No worries. And I'll wait, and I expect to see that Mayor Garcetti will sign that ordinance as it's presently crafted. The department will enforce that ordinance in the same manner in which we've enforced the existing ordinance, which contained a 100-foot boundary. The difference in the two ordinances is not just the distance, as I understand it, not just the distance of extending that boundary from 100 feet to 300 feet, but it goes to prohibit targeted activities within the 300-foot boundary, where the earlier version was less clear about people who would walk through that inclusion zone, if you will, and continue to have targeted actions. So I think it simplifies the intent of the ordinance, which is to prohibit targeted protests of residences of anyone, not just elected officials, but public officials, community members. We've seen over this last few years targeted protests of business individuals who are buying interest in various commercial endeavors here in Los Angeles. We've seen targeted protests against other, movements or advocacies for certain rights and target individuals at their homes. And so we will enforce it in a similar manner as we have the existing ordinance. We'll seek voluntary compliance. We'll do everything we can to establish a dialogue with those that engage in these prohibited activities and to achieve their recognition and their compliance. It's my hope that we'll not resort or have to resort to arrests or citations of individuals who practice some type of civil disobedience by failing to recognize the requirements of the ordinance.
As someone who's been targeted in the past, what are your thoughts on this ordinance? Is it needed?
Well, I will tell you that the instances in which my personal home has been a target, it has left a lasting mark on my family. As an individual, this is a job that, I've 40 years in October, and I take a lot of responsibilities, as we all do as public officials, with recognizing our role in such a critical task of law enforcement. It exposes itself to criticism, and that you are a public figure, and you should recognize that as such, that there'll be instances in which your privacy rights are not the same as just anyone else. However, I will also tell you that the actions that I've experienced in my home has left a lasting remark on the sense of safety and security of my family, and that is it's a very disturbing point to me, and it's one that I carry with me, that an understanding of those that are moving forward on this ordinance is, again, I think that the security of children, of young people, of wives and husbands and spouses and family members who have their only relation to the public official is through marriage or through family association, should not have to bear the burden that we've seen. This includes, I've seen elected officials and their families and their young children exposed to just cruel, vulgar, and vile obscenities, because, again, the expression is geared toward the public official. I don't think that's right. This is an ordinance that I believe there's a time for it, a place for it now. And what I would hope is that it signals to those who wish to ensure that their voices are heard that there are limits to that, of a time, place, and manner. And yet at the same time, as Chief of Los Angeles Police Department, I want to assure every one of those individuals that we want to provide a time, place, and manner so that the public and everyone can hear them and can see and understand their grievances and their petitions. But it needs to be done in a manner that I believe strikes that balance for the protections of all the interests at stake.
So just final question, what would be your message to the protesters who are furious that this is taking place, you're violating my freedom, et cetera?
I would message the courtyard of public debate. Our Civic Center is designed in part for the expression of First Amendment rights, for people to to express their grievances in a lawful manner, in a manner that gains the attention of the populace, so that they can understand and be influenced or not by their positions. But there are limits. There have always been limits in that expression. One can, the ability to set fires, damage property, injure others in your expression. Those are limited, and this is another. I guess you could say, yes, it's a further limit, but I believe it's one that's responsible. I think it's one that's measured, and I think it protects the interest, while at the same time allowing for the public expression by those that have grievances against the state, against a public official, against a private individual, that's done in a manner that is balances the rights of all involved.
What are the penalties for violating this?
The penalties range from a misdemeanor to an infraction to an administrative citation. But it's my hope that we will see, as we have seen for the most part, compliance. There have been instances, including last night, in which another demonstration occurred at an elected official's home, in which the arrival of the police can see and can be met with some further escalation by the protesters. But it's our hope in each instance is to de-escalate those, to establish the rules and what the expectations of the provisions of the ordinances are, and for the groups to comply with them. I noticed last night, in last night's event, I've seen a couple of video snippets of the National Lawyers Guild, which I don't know the individual, but I'll take the lime green hat that she was wearing, is that she's an observer, and that I hope that the National Lawyers Guild weighs into this as well and admonishes and provides accurate and clear information to protest groups regarding the ordinance and its boundaries. And lastly, we recognize that people may look at the ordinance and its boundaries and feel that they're going to violate those. And if they do that in a matter of civil disobedience, then what we ask for them is to cooperate with us. They can express themselves in a matter to facilitate an arrest that be done in a manner that allows them to make their expression, but also protects the safety of our officers and the community in which those protests are occurring. What I want to ensure in all instances is that we have no temperament on anyone involved in this, in violence or an escalation of requiring the use of force.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Our next question will be from Steve Gregory. Go ahead. Steve, are you there?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon. I have two things for you. One, I wanted to go back to something Phil was asking about with respect to the vaccines. I wanted to get your view on why there's so much resistance. You were talking about it being a mandatory requirement to become a peace officer to get all of your inoculations. I just want to know why you feel like this one is particularly troublesome for some. What are you feeling is the issue there?
Well, it's not unique to law enforcement. This hesitancy or resistance is across our entire society. And so first and foremost, we hire our officers are made up of the same communities in which we police, and what we're witnessing as far as this resistance and hesitation has a number of different origins and different motivations and also expressions as far as rationale of why they hold the position they do. What's important is that we provide education, that we focus on the facts, on the science, that we when people are misguided or misled by misinformation or by the politics, is that we center them on what the science shows as far as their safety. This, first and foremost, is about the safety of our people and their health and their ability to survive during this pandemic in a profession that exposes them every single day to the risks of this virus. And this vaccine gives them untold multitude times of benefits for keeping them from dying from this virus. So that's the first point. The second point is the public has an expectation is that as they work with law enforcement and they work with public officials and public service, is that the people they come in contact with are safe and that their health is just, we don't have officers that work the field with TB or with other infectious diseases, and the virus is no different. And so the effort here is to provide a rationale that this is proven safe and effective, and to educate and inform. But there is a larger societal issue here. This is an entire society that 2 years ago, no one was talking about vaccines, the COVID pandemic. And so this country has gone through quite a bit, and it needs to be further socialized. And that includes within our organization. Ultimately, requirements that the state establishes, the county and the department and city establishes, will be the last straw, will be what will be needed for a certain portion of our population, certain portions of our community, to become vaccinated. We saw this, I think, in some small degree. We saw 315 added vaccines last week. That's a much increased number of people taking advantage of the mobile vaccination process. And I think that's not just the pending requirement with the ordinance for the city, for LAPD and for every city employee, but I think it's also recognizing that many other parts of our society, entertainment venues, taverns, restaurants, other activities air travel are going to require vaccinations either now or in the very near future. So again, that I believe will help further socialize this and overcome the hesitancies and the resistance. I look to a point where we have, just as we have with all the other immunizations, 100% compliance with our personnel.
Okay, other question is regarding Afghan refugees. I'm wondering, since there's been such a great attention on hate crimes in this last year, I just wondered if that's something that's on your radar. Are you briefing people or getting briefed on the influx of Afghan refugees, and what does the LAPD do in this case to reach out to that community?
Oh, great question. When the resettlement began, we looked here in Los Angeles to understand where our Afghani population was. I've reached out and spoken with and sought leadership within that community to share notes and exchange information and ensure that as he leads a position of influence in the Afghani community, which has been identified to me in the San Fernando Valley, largely the Reseda community, that they recognize if they see any evidence of hate crimes or instances of hate, that the department is here to protect them, to ensure their safety, to ensure that such ignorance and bias isn't allowed to stand unchecked. We're also working with our state and federal officials in understanding the resettlement plan. Currently, Los Angeles is not a destination for any major resettlement effort. We're tracking the locations across the country that are, and I'm working with those chiefs as well to understand what the federal government is doing in those resettlement efforts and how those local municipalities are dealing with that, with those migrant resettlements.
To your knowledge, is there anyone in the LAPD with Afghan roots?
You know, I don't know if there is at this moment. I suspect there is, but our effort was in reaching out to the leadership within the Afghani residential and commercial businesses. I have not done an internal survey to identify that, but I suspect there is. Good question, Steve. I'll have to look.
No problem. I appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you, Chief. Now, does anyone have any questions before we conclude? All right, sir, any final thoughts?
No, I appreciate all of you. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the next Chief's Media Availability. Have a great day.